If you've watched the recent trailer for Final Fantasy XVI, you may have noticed lots of mature themes and a very different tone from other titles in the franchise. I mean, come on, this dude's whole face is being splattered with body juices from his friend. There's also an intimate scene where the characters clearly had sex prior, unless they play chess with all their clothes off in that world, but more than likely they were not playing chess. Might seem like I'm pointing to small moments here, but these represent a huge departure in tone from the usual series. Even looking at the latest entry, Final Fantasy VII Remake, they stayed away from showing blood at all costs, resorting to this weird purple energy looking thing instead. If we look at the original Final Fantasy VII, there was actually a lot of blood all over Shinra building, but because of the simple graphics, it didn't quite register as much. And while some may argue there is a lot of fan service in the remake, we actually don't see any intimate moments between characters, not even kissing. They did toy with a more mature setting in the recent spin-off Strangers of Paradise, which was largely a flop in its reception. There's so much blood splatter in that game that I'm reminded of Spartacus Blood and Sand, which actually turned out to be 50% blood, 10% sand, and 40% knobs. Leaving that chapter aside, let's take a look at the directors for the main games so far. By the way, I'm gonna butcher all these names, I really apologize. This is just what's gonna happen. So Hironobu Sakaguchi handled the first few games up to Final Fantasy V. Hiroyuki Ito picked up the mantle for 6 and also did 9 and 12. Worth mentioning that 9 and 12 had quite unique styles compared to some of the other ones as well. 9 is widely viewed as a unique title in the franchise that is highly acclaimed and well loved by the fans. 12 was a lot more divisive, with some people hating it for its gambit-focused combat and others loving it for it. Yoshinori Kitase led some of the most iconic titles like 7, 8, and 10, and more recently 7 Remake. These are some of the most successful titles in the franchise, but of course, some fans love 9 over these, your mileage may vary. Personally, 7 and 10 are my favorites of all time, and I think the direction in them was stellar. Not to mention that he also directed Chrono Trigger, which albeit unrelated is a legendary game in its own right as well. Motomu Toriyama did 13. Yeah, we don't really talk about 13. And 10 Part 2. Well, let's skip that one as well. We're almost caught up here, stick with me. Naoki Yoshida, of course, headed 14, and Hajime Tabata heading 15, as well as some of the Crisis Core stuff. So that brings us to the present and final Final Fantasy XVI. Probably not final, but you see what I was going for there. Hiroshi Takai takes the helm as director for 16, which if my research is correct will be his first ever Final Fantasy game to direct, so we have a brand new vision for the upcoming game, as well as a new character design lead in Hiroshi Minagawa. Most concept character work thus far was led by legendary designer Tetsuya Nomura, which was in charge of most games starting with 7 onwards, including the remake. That coupled with the trailer itself and the much grittier tone shown leads me to think this Final Fantasy will hit different, like the kids say. Whether that's a good or bad thing, only time will tell. But it seems Square is taking a huge bet here, and I have to applaud the effort in recent titles to innovate, going from a purely turn-based to real-time action, and now evolving the whole tone of the experience into a mature rating. The reception of this next game may well dictate the future of the whole series. Will it flop and cause a rebound to the more wholesome and traditional JRPG narrative style, or will it be a hit and sediment the series' direction towards a more realistic and gritty vibe? For me, the cornerstone of a Final Fantasy game is the camaraderie established between your party members, the feeling that you're in this journey together, and regardless of how it ends, that time spent together is meaningful. The next game seems to have more of a focus on one character's life, which could be awesome if you meet and hang out with many amazing side characters, but if that sense of gang isn't there, it might be lacking something fundamental for me. I'm all for the addition of mature themes, and I'd love if the narrative focuses more around adults than kids. I've always found having kids around makes the dialogue choices for banter much more limited since kids will never say bad words or use innuendo. One of my favorite book authors, Brandon Sanderson, has a saying in one of his series, "Journey over destination." That to me embodies my love for Final Fantasy games, and every time the journey and time spent hanging out with characters is the juice for me. Even if I dislike the ending, I can cherish the countless moments of camaraderie and friendship I enjoyed along the way. All I can hope for is that despite the change in direction, there is still a huge focus on the journey part, elevating side characters that mark your adventure much more than any bombastic fight could. The new Crisis Core Reunion game is out in December, and you bet your ass that we'll be playing it on my stream over on Twitch. So if you enjoyed this video, consider following me over on Twitch, where I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Links for that down below. But that's it for me today. And until next time, farewell.